If you close your eyes and cross yourself, then in general, we can say that people have been ruling the Earth for 5 million years. This is of course figurative, because it is a bit hard to call even a 200,000-year-old Pithecanthropus, who is afraid of wolves, the ruler of the planet. But let's say man has ruled the Earth for these 5 million years. Even this exaggerated figure is 36 times less than the interval during which the planet was ruled by dinosaurs. And already they did dominate the Earth beyond any doubt. The multi-ton carcasses to this day bring researchers to ecstasy, and for ordinary people serve as a source of interest. Out of respect for their history, in the next few minutes, we will try to cram everything you need to know about dinosaurs into one video. Of course, here will be far from everything, but still briefly on the key points of the history of dinosaurs, we will go through. And begin our journey somewhere 250 million years ago, at the beginning of the Mesozoic era, which can be roughly translated as average life. There's not much of it yet because just recently the Great Permian extinction, the largest extinction in Earth's history, when 96% of marine species and 73% of vertebrates disappeared. This is the only extinction where even seemingly immortal insects were crushed. Scientists are still battling about the causes of the extinction. So far, the main hypotheses, a collision with a colossal-sized meteorite and volcanic activity, which led to the greenhouse effect, atmospheric change, and terrible volcanic winter, which could last for decades. In this extinction, Earth lost the now popular trilobites that inspire horror movie writers. But the important thing for us is that after the extinction at the beginning of the Mesozoic, when the situation stabilized, the Earth became quite spacious. New species met no competition and sprang up like mushrooms. This period is called the Triassic Period, and it lasted somewhere around 50 million years, ending, give or take, 200 million years ago. In addition to the space for settlement, the Earth had another highlight, the huge continent of Pangaea, which had only just begun to split. It was easy for species to migrate, and animals and plants with minimal differences walked and grew all over the Earth. There were no polar caps at all, and the climate beckoned for reptiles to evolve. It was very hot and dry, and reptile skins lose little moisture, and kidneys save water like mad. The competition, as we mentioned, is minimal, for the largest living populations are mollusks and ammonites, which compete with reptiles only just. In general, evolve as much as you want. So while the therapsids, our distant ancestors with the first signs of mammals, were dying out, reptiles were evolving. It's funny because who knows how the story of global warming would have unfolded. It was the crumbs that survived the therapsid extinction that would become the ancestors of mammals and humans. If it had happened sooner, human history might have started differently. But as it happened, the reptiles survived the explosion. Archosaurs appeared, from which the dinosaurs emerged, along with flying lizards and good old crocodiles that have survived to the present day. Archosaurs quickly displaced harmless herbivorous Lystrosaurus, which for a short time managed to become the dominant species of the planet. No wonder, for we're talking about mostly predatory reptiles. Look at a crocodile. Increase its size by a factor of 3, and you'll understand why peaceful animals didn't stand a chance. Somewhere between 230 and 225 million years ago, the first dinosaurs evolved from archosaurs. It is believed that this happened in South America. One of the oldest excavated is the Styracosaurus, a small, only 31 inches tall baby, but insanely fast and long enough because the individual could reach 7 feet. The beauty moved on its hind legs, and the front ones were small by tradition. Also, according to another tradition of dinosaurs, the bones of Styracosaurus were hollow. It is very important because thanks to hollow bones, even possessing huge sizes, dinosaurs weighed less than it may seem. Actually, for an example of usefulness, it is not necessary to go far. Take a look at the dinosaurs that are alive today. Birds, like their ancestors, have hollow or tubular bones, which helps them to fly. Other interesting examples include Herrerasaurus, which could weigh up to half a ton. But the pattern remained the same: relative bipedality, a long tail, and a love of meat. Also, the name of the first dinosaur claims Eoraptor, a crumb weighing about 22 pounds. But in general, whoever was the first, almost all dinosaurs originally came from a group of sauropodomorpha with a similar structure. The key point is only that initially mostly predatory individuals appeared. The long neck and herbivory came later as the forms evolved. Herbivorous dinosaurs are generally considered the more biologically advanced guys. But what really matters to us is the fact that you can't call dinosaurs dominators in that era. Even giant crocodiles are better suited to the job. In the Triassic period, dinosaurs were one of many fighting for a place in the sun, and they were no more than 2% of the total animal fauna. The denouement came about 200 million years ago with the start of the Jurassic Period. Traditionally, another extinction event has been implicated. It is called the Triassic Jurassic, for as it is not difficult to guess, The extinction exhibited the boundary between the two periods. As always, there are disputes about the causes, and again, volcanoes and climate change are involved in the case, but the consequence is that the direct competitors of the dinosaurs, Cretaceous, became extinct, and with them about half of the now known species. Dinosaurs miraculously survived, and it was from this period that their total dominance began. It was accompanied by several important processes. First, the splitting of Pangaea into two continents, which led to the emergence of different conditions and accordingly different populations in different parts of the planet. Second, the splitting process was accompanied by numerous volcanic eruptions. They emitted wild quantities of carbon dioxide that the proponents of anthropogenic global warming never dreamed of. And who on Earth feeds on carbon dioxide? That's right, plants. As new seas and water masses formed, rainfall increased. And that also helped the plants. Ferns and horsetails grew to enormous sizes. And by the way, many of the plants of this period are fossils, which are now actively mined for fuel. For the dinosaurs, deprived of competitors, it was a gift from above. The sauropod group mentioned earlier gave birth to real monsters. In 2018, a sauropodomorph weighing 12 tons was found in South Africa. Predatory species in the early Jurassic period were also starting to show gigantism, but not that much yet. It was herbivores that boomed as vegetation became abundant. For example, there was Solidosaurus, considered by many to be the ancestor of Stegosaurus. The 14-feet-long gentleman ate grass and was already covered with small spines for protection from predators. Heterodinosaurus is also an interesting inhabitant of this era. Being 1.5 meters in height, the guy was not particularly distinguished but had differentiated teeth, having incisors and chewing teeth and even fangs, which is especially strange given that they consider Heterodinosaurus herbivorous. But perhaps the most important feature of the early Jurassic era was the pterosaurs. The flying lizards appeared at the same time as the terrestrial dinosaurs, but from where exactly scientists can't yet find, for there are almost no intermediate species. It is important to us that somewhere 190 million years ago, pterosaurs began to nurse babies and actively distinguish themselves into new species. Pterosaurs fed mainly on animals from the seas. Actually, most paleontologists agree that dinosaurs learned to fly only for the sake of hunting marine animals. One of the classic representatives is Dorognathus, with a wingspan of 1.5 meters. Its teeth were the envy of the dinosaurs, for they were curved and long, for the sake, of course, of catching the dodgy fish. The herbivorous, carnivorous, and flying things evolved at a rapid pace. And somewhere around 150 million years ago, dinosaurs made up more than half of the animal kingdom. Of course, the insane amount of food, lack of competitors, and gigatons of oxygen produced by huge plants led to gigantism, and by the middle of the Jurassic period, light saw dinosaurs familiar to many. For example, 100-ton baby Diplodocus or 2-ton, armed to the teeth Stegosaurus, which except for protective shields, famous for the fact that with a huge mass of his brain weighed only 0.15 pounds. However, this is no cause for jokes. Scientists have revealed that the spinal cord of Stegosaurus contained more nerve tissue than the brain, and definitely helped to perform some functions. There was also a 70-feet-long Brachiosaurus with an insanely long neck that helped it feed where smaller animals couldn't reach. Here also appeared the ancestors of Tyrannosaurus. In the predatory family of theropods 160 million years ago walked 10-feet-tall Guanlong. A little later, he was replaced by Delong, with a similar structure and habits. But it won't evolve into a Tyrannosaurus anytime soon. But the birds have already hustled and evolved into Archaeopteryx. It's the first flying lizard covered in feathers. It's thought to be the bridge between dinosaurs and modern birds. In the middle of the Jurassic period, an important moment for mankind took place, as tiny mouse-like mammals shared the planet with the dinosaurs. To compete directly, of course, it was not possible. But tiny Juramaia successfully gave birth and fed their children with milk, right under the feet of dinosaurs. So let the history of mankind be short. Our ancestors still lived side by side with Diplodocus and 145 million years ago. Together with them at the beginning of the Cretaceous period. By this time, the Earth had undergone some very global changes. The continents had almost definitively separated, even if they were not in the places we're used to. This is important because this is how dinosaur populations evolved under restricted conditions. For airplanes to cross the ocean, the Brontosaurus unfortunately didn't invent airplanes. And when talking about dinosaurs, many people imagine that all species were found everywhere. In reality, of course, dinosaurs migrated, but the main populations were still tied to certain geographical points. For example, Stegosaurus remains were found in the United States, and this dinosaur is even the official symbol of the state of Colorado. But in reality, the largest concentration of stegosaurs lived in Eastern Asia. To this we will address a little later, and returning to the history, note that at the beginning of the Cretaceous period, gigantism of dinosaurs came to a peak. One of the largest species in history lived at this time. Each vertebra of Amphicoelius was over 2 meters long. The body as a whole was more than 200 feet, and the mass of the little ones reached up to 120 tons. There was a shift in the family of predators too. In Africa lived Carcharodontosaurus, 40 feet long and up to 10 tons in weight, which is quite a lot for a predator. And in the Cretaceous, there was a real explosion in the number of individuals. For a long time, scientists associated it with the development of flowering, because in the Cretaceous period appeared bees and insects pollinating plants. But later, the theory of the explosion of variety of dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period was refuted, and now scientists agree that most species appeared earlier, and at this time increased only the direct number of individuals. So we have what we have. 100 million years ago, in the north of Africa, appeared the largest predatory dinosaur in history. It is Spinosaurus, holding this title despite the fact that Tyrannosaurus were slightly heavier. In length, the baby could reach up to 52 feet, which is a few feet more than the famous rival. Tyrannosaurs themselves, by the way, appeared much later. They are almost the youngest species of dinosaurs, for the oldest remains date back 70 million years ago. The same can be said about everyone's favorite velociraptors. They too appeared plus or minus 80 million years ago. Well, and the insanely popular Triceratops in general is almost the youngest species of dinosaurs, for the latest skeletons dated 68 million years ago. So ironically, the most popular dinosaurs from the Jurassic Park movie series actually appeared much later, in the Cretaceous period. And they looked very different. Just recently, scientists have agreed that the bodies of almost all dinosaurs were covered with cheerful plumage, and many scientists now believe that velociraptors were more like walking birds than lizards from the movies. And as for the Cretaceous period, life went on as usual. The Earth was getting a little cooler, and you could even find snow at the poles. Because of the splitting of the continents and their drift from each other, the climate in different parts of the world was different. This again provoked the evolution of species depending on the territories. For example, birds were finally separated from dinosaurs, and the transitional link between species, Archaeopteryx, became extinct. But pterodactyls still dominated the air. It is not surprising because the wingspan of some individuals like Quetzalcoatl could be as much as 50 feet. These guys are considered the largest airborne dinosaurs in history. True, there are several competitors, but this is already paleontology and not our concern. Our concern is history, and from this point of view, it's worth noting the snakes. They, along with lizards, appeared in the Cretaceous period, and they survived to the present day virtually unchanged. There were on the planet and turtles, reduced in size crocodiles, and of course fish. True again in the second role, for the sea was densely occupied by dinosaurs. Little Elasmosaurus ate up to 15 tons, and ichthyosaurs with plesiosaurs were not too far behind. But the most important thing for us is that by the end of the Cretaceous period, mammals had already divided into marsupials, placentals, and egg-laying mammals. About 87 million years ago, the first apes and half-apes had already appeared. It is believed that the ancient primates most likely appeared in the tropical forests of Asia, and then dispersed around the world. Time estimates of the appearance of distant ancestors of man are constantly shifting, but it is safe to say that in the time of Tyrannosaurus, monkeys were already climbing trees. But like the dinosaurs in their time, mammals could not even dream of dominance, and it wasn't even the gigantism of the dinosaurs. Rather, on the contrary, the matter is in their diversity, for in addition to the giant, there was a bunch of medium and tiny dinosaurs occupying all niches. Scientists have long been trying to classify them. It comes out with difficulty because of the constant discoveries, but still, any structure is available.
This video is brought to you by Thorum. Take a look at this rings. They have rings made from 4 billion-year-old Gibeon meteorite and genuine 65 million-year-old T-Rex bone. If you are a fan of Vikings, they have Odin ring, the Norse god of war, the Thor ring, and all of them are crafted by hand. Head the link in the comments and use promo code LIVINGHISTORY to get 20% off a truly unique ring.
Initially, there are two groups: dinosaurs with lizard hips and dinosaurs with bird hips. Within the guys with lizard hips, there's a separate suborder, the theropods. They moved on 2 legs and were mostly predators. Tyrannosaurus is a classic example of theropods. There were omnivorous and even herbivorous theropods. There is Xenosaurus, for example. From this suborder comes the familiar information that Tyrannosaurus is the ancestor of the modern chicken. This is partly true because recently scientists have attributed to the theropods not only chickens but all modern birds because of similarities in structure. Well, as for the number of theropods from the total number of dinosaurs, they were about 35%. The second suborder of dinosaurs with lizard hips is the sauropodomorphs. As we mentioned, this is one of the oldest varieties of dinosaurs, and one of the most recognizable, because they are Diplodocus, Brontosaurus, and Brachiosaurus. Initially, dinosaurs of this group were small bipedal predators or omnivores, but later turned into giant herbivorous monsters, which were not liked to be hunted even by bad predators. As for dinosaurs with bird-like hips, their main and most studied suborder ornithopods, which roughly can be translated as bird feet. A classic example of an ornithopod is the famous iguanodon, weighing 15 tons, and the largest individuals of the suborder could reach 20 tons, being mostly herbivorous. And so could the guys in the next suborder, the stegosaurs. It's not hard to guess that their classic representative is a stegosaurus, and the main feature of the suborder is the plates along the body. The next suborder, Ankylosaurus, had bony formations on the body. The largest representatives could reach a mass of 6 tons. The last suborder, Ceratopsian, is also familiar to everyone with the horned, armored face of the dinosaur of the same name. Often Ceratopsian is mistakenly attributed to Velociraptor because of the similarity of names, but do not forget that the tiny predators, as it is supposed to belong not to Ceratopses but to the suborder of predatory theropods. There are dozens of families, hundreds of genera, and thousands of individuals that scientists still cannot classify. Therefore, to delve into the maze is not so important. It is only important to remember that at the peak of dinosaurs, they made up to 70% of all life on the planet and lived absolutely everywhere, including Antarctica, which was then quite a green continent. In 1986, on James Ross Island in Antarctica, they found the remains of Antarctopelta, an armored ankylosaur. The pride of another continent, Australia, is the Australovenator. This is another predatory theropod, which archaeologists compare in speed to the cheetah and is generally called an enlarged and more deadly version of Velociraptor. South America also has something to be proud of, if only because the first dinosaurs came out from here. Therefore, the title of paleontologist there is honorable, and excavations are conducted on a regular basis and lead to the discovery of guys like Argentinosaurus, one of the largest dinosaurs in history, weighing up to 100 tons. Europe, in turn, has something to boast about too, as there has been some excellent work done on Archaeopteryxes, the ancestors of modern birds. The continent also has a named Europasaurus, which is able to evoke emotion because it is one of the smallest sauropods with a weight hundreds of times less than Diplodocus. The most popular dinosaur of Asia is also tiny. It is the same Velociraptor, which, because of the movies for some reason, is considered a resident of America, as well as the giant Spinosaurus, which we also mentioned earlier. It actually comes from Africa, and one of the best preserved skeletons was bombed during World War II. About the dinosaurs that inhabited North America, perhaps, we will not mention. Here you will find the T-Rex, Triceratops, Diplodocus, Stegosaurus, and other no less popular dinosaurs. The next stage of the dinosaur's life is, of course, extinction. Mass culture always tries to portray things simply. So in the minds of most people, the extinction of dinosaurs is a stray meteorite, nuclear winter, and starvation of survivors. But in reality, it's always a little more complicated than that. Yes, somewhere around 65 million years ago on Earth, a giant meteorite fell, which is opaquely hinted at by the 110 miles crater Chicxulub on the Yucatan Peninsula. Due to its enormous size, it was impossible to detect it without satellites and aerial surveys, so the discovery was unknown to scientists for a long time. Soil samples and modeling confirmed the fact of the meteorite fall and its terrifying effect. The force of the impact was 2 million times higher than the most powerful atomic bomb invented. The hot shockwaves circled the Earth several times. All over the world, volcanoes began to erupt, forests burned, and nature went crazy. For several years, night reigned on the planet. Due to the dropped temperature, lack of sunlight, soot, and cinders, plants and algae had a hard time, and even harder on those who fed on them. And about those who fed on plants, it's silent. Many species of animals and plants became extinct, so it is not surprising that the dinosaurs are attributed to the same. There is only one inconsistency. Excavations show that by the end of the Cretaceous period, long before the meteorite, the rate of appearance of many species of dinosaurs became less than the rate of their extinction. For example, saurs and ceratopsians were already on the decline, that is, already extinct. In parallel, excavations argue that the greatest increase in diversity at the end of the Cretaceous period was observed in mammals, and it turns out that they have already slowly squeezed the dinosaurs, and also, plus or minus, at this time occurred the most powerful series of eruptions of Deccan traps. The final chord of give or take at this time was that the amount of oxygen in the air decreased, there was less vegetation, and temperatures began to swing from warming to cooling due to volcanism. As a result, scientists split into 3 camps in the extinction debate, supporting the theories of an asteroid, volcanoes, or environmental causes. The asteroid supporters seem to have the strongest arguments. Layers of clay coinciding with the demise of the dinosaurs, anomalous amounts of iridium, a metal born in space. Proponents of volcanism show a short-term cooling that changed to warming long before the meteorite hit. Usually this happens because of eruptions, but ecologists do not forget to remind that flowering plants in the Cretaceous period replaced ferns, and without any meteorites. So why shouldn't the same thing happen in the animal environment? Theories are built in the most unusual ways, ranging from the idea that mammals ate the eggs of dinosaurs, to a funny study showing that because of climate change, dinosaurs could only give birth to males. The theory seems crazy, but only at first glance. After all, some species of turtle are dying out right before our eyes. By the example of now living creatures, scientists have proved that the temperature of incubation directly affects the sex of the born turtle. By the end of the century, 93% of green turtle cubs will be female. The situation is the opposite of the dinosaurs, but it is obvious that with this imbalance, the turtle population will decrease many times over. The same thing could happen to the giants. No matter how you look at it, the study demonstrates that dinosaur dominance started to wane even before the meteorite. And lately, the voices of scientists are getting louder and louder, saying that the stone from space was more like a nail in the coffin lid of the dinosaurs, but not a determining factor. After all, otherwise it will be necessary to explain why even small dinosaurs, which from mammals neither size nor adaptation to survival especially did not differ. Perhaps the most ironclad argument is that global extinctions in the history of the Earth were at once 5, and small even more, and some are studied thoroughly, and are just the result of a whole set of factors such as pressure changes, volcanism, ocean acidity, and climate. So why exactly did the dinosaurs have to die instantly and in 1 second? It's also important to remember that any and even the most accurate measurement now has a percentage error. And when we talk about events that happened millions of years ago, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of years of error, for which anything can happen. And most likely the process of the extinction of dinosaurs was complex, and began because of a dozen different reasons that overlapped each other. Of course, meteorites and volcanoes also played their role, but not so that both megacities and dinosaur cities teeming with life were wiped off the face of the Earth in a few days. What we call instantaneous in terms of history has been happening for so long that you can multiply the entire history of mankind by 100, and it would still fall within the statistical margin of error. So until the moment when technology is accurate enough, throwing loud statements about the causes of the extinction of the dinosaurs is definitely not worth it. They should be respected, for to dominate the Earth for 150 million years is very strong. Some facts about dinosaurs are still unknown to the mass public and are amazing. After all, Stegosaurus and Tyrannosaurus were separated from each other by more time than Tyrannosaurus from you and me. As for life expectancy, some paleontologists believe that large dinosaurs could live quietly for 200 years. No wonder that when people found the first remains of huge reptiles, they were considered the remains of ancient giants. In China, dinosaurs could be the source of myths about dragons, but in modern times they serve as a reminder to mankind that our so-called dominance on the planet is a joke by historical standards. We, of course, have grown great, but even for a couple of thousand years, natural and social cataclysms have shattered humanity. Will we be able to live at least a tenth of the time of the dinosaurs? We will be glad to see your answer to the question in the comments. But for now, we're done. See you again, folks.